There's a side of golf that few people know. Behind the perfectly manicured greens and the apparent calm, there exists a world of tensions, egos, and moments so intense they could rival any contact sport. This is the story of clashes, fatal mistakes, and gestures that forever mark the history of modern golf. It all began on the 18th hole at TPC Harding Park, in an atmosphere loaded with electricity. Keegan Bradley, known for his impulsive temperament on the course, was battling to close out a match that had demanded every bit of his focus. But just when he seemed to have everything under control, an unexpected comment sparked the fire. Miguel Ángel Jiménez, the seasoned Spaniard famous for his unmistakable style and relaxed attitude, stepped in uninvited. He had watched Bradley prepare for a drop and, drawing from his experience, believed he needed to correct him, 2 club lengths instead of 1. What Jiménez considered a rules clarification, Bradley saw as an intolerable intrusion. The air tightened within seconds. Steve Hale, Bradley's caddy, jumped in immediately to push the Spaniard aside, but Jiménez didn't move an inch. In a matter of moments, the situation escalated from a simple verbal exchange to a face-to-face standoff. Bradley, furious, stood inches from Jiménez, making it obvious with his glare that his help wasn't welcome. The scene, unfolding in full view of the crowd, became an unexpected spectacle. Later, Bradley admitted it was a heat-of-the-moment reaction. But he also made something clear. He would defend his caddy no matter what. He never apologized. To him, he was simply doing his duty as a veteran, even if the world saw it differently. But golf doesn't flare up only through confrontations between players. Sometimes, threats come from outside the ropes, turning an elite tournament into a chaotic scene no one could have predicted. It was the final round of the 2024 Travelers Championship at TPC River Highlands. Everything pointed to an epic finish. Scottie Scheffler and Tom Kim neck and neck, each fighting to write his name into history. The tension was heavy. Fans held their breath as the players approached the 18th green, and then the silence shattered. From the edges of the course, a sudden burst of movement caught every eye. 6 individuals stormed the green, running with almost choreographed precision. They wore shirts with a blunt message: "No golf on a dead planet." Within seconds, they released smoke canisters that filled the air with red and yellow clouds and scattered an unknown powder across the pristine surface of the green. The crowd froze. The players, bewildered, stepped back as the atmosphere shifted into something closer to a protest than a sporting event. Golf's signature calm dissolved into visual and auditory chaos. Security reacted quickly. Officers rushed toward the activists, some of whom resisted fiercely. In mere minutes, the green became a battleground. Thick smoke, scuffles, and muffled shouts drowned beneath the rising murmur of the crowd. Scheffler and Kim, used to managing the pressure of a decisive putt, now faced a completely different kind of stress. Their eyes followed every movement as the situation was brought under control. Spectators, in disbelief, recorded every second on their phones. Golf, normally a sanctuary of calm and precision, had just become an unexpected symbol of environmental protest. That day, more than crowning a champion, the Travelers Championship delivered a historic moment. A reminder that even the most prestigious courses are not immune to the forces developing beyond their boundaries. Not all memorable scenes in golf come from chaos or confrontation. Some are etched into memory for their sheer eccentricity, as if defying the very laws of the sport and of physics. Arnold Palmer Invitational, 2013. Sergio García, a player known for his composure and creativity, faced an unusual problem on the 10th hole. His tee shot had been such a disaster that the ball didn't end up in the rough or a bunker, but suspended 15 feet above the ground, tangled in the branches of a tree. Most players would have taken the penalty and moved on, but Sergio isn't like most players. To the astonishment of the crowd, he dropped his bag, took off his jacket, and started climbing. Every movement brought him closer to a spectacle that few would ever forget. Clinging to the branches like an improvised koala, Garcia assessed the ball's position. What came next was worthy of a viral video. With only one arm free, he executed an inverted, almost blind swing. A brief moment of silence, and then the crisp sound of impact. The ball shot out, landing miraculously back in play. The ovation was immediate. His playing partner, William McGirt, couldn't hide his astonishment. It was a moment of pure ingenuity, the kind of scene that turns a sport into legend. But heroism came at a cost. In the effort, Garcia injured his shoulder. His next shot barely traveled 30 yards, and to make matters worse, a sudden downpour forced him to withdraw. What began as an act of boldness ended in retreat, leaving everyone wondering whether it had been worth it. This episode showcased not only Garcia's skill, but also his courage to challenge the impossible, even though sometimes the impossible hits back. Sometimes it isn't the players who steal the spotlight, but the spectators themselves. Because when golf mixes with a bit too much enthusiasm and alcohol, the result can be as unexpected as it is memorable. It happened on the 16th hole at Bethpage Black, during a championship marked by the course's extreme difficulty and the tension among competitors. Everything unfolded with the usual solemnity until an unusual scene stole the show. On the edge of the green, a fan, clearly affected by more than a few drinks, was wobbling dangerously. Marshals tried to keep him at a safe distance, but gravity and perhaps fate had other plans. With one misstep, the man lost his balance and tumbled straight into a greenside bunker. The crowd's reaction was immediate. First, a stunned silence, followed by waves of laughter spreading like ripples. But the show didn't end there. Determined to regain his dignity, the fan attempted to climb out of the bunker. Each attempt was more disastrous than the last. Slips, falls, and an unshakable determination that drew applause and cheers from the spectators. Finally, after several failed attempts, security intervened. 2 officers helped the unfortunate fan climb up the sandy bank, managing a retreat as ungraceful as his entrance. That day, while professionals battled to avoid the bunkers, a spectator proved, in the worst way possible, that getting out of one is no easy task. Not all golf controversies unfold on the grass. Some are born from words spoken off the course, words that expose an uncomfortable truth about how the sport and society perceive women. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani learned this the hard way. During a podcast interview, he shared an anecdote that quickly ignited a media storm. According to his account, he had played a round of golf with Michelle V and Rush Limbaugh, with photographers closely following their every move. Jokingly, Giuliani described how the attention wasn't on him or Limbaugh, but on we. Michelle is beautiful, he said, before commenting on her unusual putting stance, insinuating that photographers were trying to capture compromising images of her underwear. The joke ended with an awkward laugh and the question, "Is it appropriate for me to tell this?" The reaction was immediate. Michelle V, without even mentioning his name, responded on social media with a firm message against the objectification of female athletes. She highlighted how disappointing it was that even in 2024, a professional could be reduced to an object of curiosity for her appearance, rather than valued for her talent and achievements. This incident didn't just place Giuliani at the center of controversy. It reminded the world that women in sports, even in one as seemingly refined as golf, continue to face scrutiny unrelated to their performance. A bitter reminder that the path toward equality still has obstacles, even on the greenest and most prestigious courses on the planet. Golf is known for its almost sacred silence, a mutual respect between players and spectators that seems unbreakable. But there are moments when that thin line snaps, and the course becomes a stage for unexpected confrontation. It happened at the 2024 Phoenix Open. Zach Johnson, famous for his unshakable composure, was heading toward the 10th hole with his usual precision. But something in the atmosphere felt different. Amid the murmur of the crowd, a sharp voice cut through a fan, fueled by both alcohol and excitement, who wouldn't stop shouting. "Come on, Zach, is that the best you've got?" he yelled between shots, his words tearing through the calm like a poorly hit driver. Johnson tried to stay focused, but with every step, the comments grew more cutting, more personal. Finally, the golfer stopped, turned on his heels, and faced the heckler. With an icy firmness that froze the rest of the spectators, he delivered a blunt, "I've had enough." The scene left everyone in silence. A man known for his poise had just shown that even the calmest have a limit. But it wasn't an isolated case. In the same tournament, Billy Horschel was forced to stop his play when another fan began shouting during his swing. Furious, he walked straight toward the crowd, demanding respect not only for himself but for all competitors trying to maintain their focus under relentless pressure. Even Ricky Fowler, at the Players' Championship, had his own confrontation with a fan. The clip went viral, proof that modern golf faces an unexpected challenge, preserving the essence of a sport long seen as a haven of quiet, in front of an increasingly loud and provocative audience. These incidents remind us that while golf may seem like an oasis of serenity, tension can arise at any moment. And sometimes the enemies aren't on the leaderboard, but among the crowd. Not all comebacks in sports are the same. Some are simply wins. Others become epics that transcend the game and remain etched in collective memory. And none has been as impactful as Tiger Woods at the 2019 Masters. Just 2 years earlier, his career seemed over. Images of his arrests and the endless back surgeries filled the headlines. The man who had dominated golf for decades looked like a shadow of himself struggling to walk, unable to compete. Many had written him off. But in Augusta, Tiger wrote a chapter no one dared imagine. The final round was an exhibition of precision, patience, and nerves of steel. Francesco Molinari led the tournament, with Brooks Koepka lurking close behind. The turning point came at the iconic 12th hole, Golden Bell. Molinari's shot fell into the water, a double bogey that opened the door. Tiger, eyes locked and swing perfectly measured, crossed through it without hesitation. On 15, Firethorn, he made birdie to take control. Then on 16, Redbud, he left the ball just inches from the hole, a shot so perfect it felt like an echo of his glory days. A gentle putt secured the birdie and the lead. And then, the defining moment. On the 18th hole, with the gallery holding its breath, Tiger sank the final putt. The roar of the crowd echoed far beyond Augusta, a celebration not just of a victory, but of the return of a giant. Woods finished the day with a 70, won 3 under par, securing his 5th Masters and his 15th major. Beyond the numbers, it was a lesson in resilience and greatness. A reminder that even legends can fall, but they can rise again. That day, golf didn't just regain its icon. It witnessed the redemption of a man who had been one step away from being forgotten. In golf, some shots are so perfect they seem destined for legend, until the bureaucracy of the rules erases them in an instant. Year 2000. Loch Lomond, Scotland. Annika Sörenstam, one of the greatest figures in women's golf, faced a delicate chip in the Solheim Cup. The pressure was immense, but her concentration was unshakable. She prepared, swung, and the ball rose with the perfect trajectory. It hit the green, rolled softly, and disappeared into the hole, a flawless chip. The crowd erupted. Sörenstam and her partner Janice Moody celebrated ecstatically. But the celebration stopped abruptly. In the U.S. team area, a growing murmur ended with Kelly Robbins raising her voice. She played out of turn. The accusation was serious. In golf, playing out of turn isn't just bad etiquette, it can be a rules violation. Officials gathered for a long, tense discussion. Finally, the decision landed like a hammer. Sörenstam had to replay the shot. With the crowd still holding its breath, Annika tried to regroup. But the magic was gone. On her second attempt, the ball didn't drop. Europe lost the point, and later, the match. That controversy marked a turning point in the Solheim Cup. What began as a strategic move by the U.S. team became an open wound, fueling intense rivalry for years. That perfect chip remained in memory not as a triumph, but as a symbol of how, sometimes, the rules strip the poetry from sport. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories are born in the most unlikely places. And in the world of golf, few have been as surprising and moving as Sofia Popov's. In 2020, Popov arrived at the Women's British Open as a complete unknown. Ranked 304th in the world, without a significant professional title, and having lost her LPGA Tour card the previous year, her chances seemed non-existent. Even her entry was the result of chance. A top 10 at the Marathon Classic opened a door she had barely dared to approach. But what happened at Royal Troon was pure magic. From the first shot, Sofia played as if destiny owed her a second chance. With a final round 68, 3 under par, she not only beat the field, she rewrote expectations. She won by 2 strokes, becoming the first German woman in history to capture a major. The $675,000 prize multiplied her career earnings by 6. But the real victory ran deeper. For years, Popov had battled Lyme disease in silence, dealing with fatigue and pain that threatened to push her out of the sport forever. When she holed the final putt, tears poured out uncontrollably. "I almost quit golf last year," she confessed later, her voice trembling. "Thank God I didn't." That day, Sofia Popov didn't just win a trophy, she became a symbol of resilience and of how, even when everything seems lost, passion can bring us back to life. There are shots in golf that defy logic, moments so unlikely they feel straight out of a Hollywood script. And in 2020, Jon Rahm delivered one of those moments in the most sacred place in golf, Augusta National. It was November 10th, the eve of the Masters, and Rahm was on the 16th hole, taking part in one of the tournament's most beloved traditions, skipping the ball across the pond onto the green. A light-hearted routine, until Rahm turned it into history. With an 8-iron in his hands, he struck a precise shot that sent the ball skimming across the water. 1, 2, 3 skips, as if the pond were a flexible mirror. The ball reached the green with improbable elegance, and then its dance began. It rolled softly at first, then gathered speed as it followed the slope with perfect precision. The crowd held its breath as the path became unavoidable. The ball aligned with the hole, tilted on the edge, and dropped. A hole-in-one. Perfect. Impossible. Legendary. The fact that it happened during a practice round only made it more magical. No trophy was at stake, but something else was. Pure astonishment, proof that even in practice sessions, timeless moments can be born. For Rahm, the shot had an added sweetness. It was his 26th birthday, a gift no cake or candle could ever match. In that instant, he became the star of one of the most watched and celebrated highlights in recent Masters history. Sometimes, legendary moments don't come from experience, but from youthful audacity and the ability to turn pressure into inspiration. Solheim Cup. A hostile scenario for any rookie, American soil, thousands of home fans, and on the other side, a seasoned rival. But for Charlie Hull, a 17-year-old Brit with a disarming smile and fire in her eyes, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Her assignment? Face Paula Creamer, one of the most respected and battle-tested players on the circuit. Few believed a newcomer could topple such a wall of talent and composure. From the first tee, the atmosphere was electric. European fans, aware of the magnitude of the challenge, turned the course into a sea of blue and yellow, waving flags and chanting Hull's name as if it were a World Cup final. Charlie, far from intimidated, absorbed the energy like fuel. Every swing drew applause. Every birdie sent a shockwave through the fairway. Creamer, always focused and serious, began to show signs of discomfort. As the young Englishwoman delivered one perfect shot after another, the pressure shifted sides. By the 14th hole, Hull had already sealed the duel with a clinical putt, earning a 5-4 victory and securing the decisive point for Europe to win the Solheim Cup for the first time on American soil. And then came the moment that made everyone smile. As she shook Paula Creamer's hand at the end of the match, Charlie Hull, with the same ease with which she had dominated the game, asked, "Can I have your autograph?" The question, innocent yet tinged with almost theatrical irony, sparked laughter across the gallery. Some were left wide-eyed, others couldn't help but applaud the young champion's boldness. That day, Charlie Hull didn't just win a match, she proved that greatness doesn't always come with age, and that golf can be every bit as thrilling as any other sporting battle. In golf, patience is a virtue, but for some, frustration can become its own spectacle. And no one embodied that wild side better than Tommy Thunderbolt Bolt. They nicknamed him Terrible Tommy, a name that might sound more fitting for a professional wrestler than a golfer. But Bolt earned it with every outburst every club sent flying, and every furious glare at a caddy who was simply trying to survive the round. On one occasion, during a tournament in Miami, Bolt threw his driver with such rage that it ended up at the bottom of a canal. It sank so deep that even a professional diver couldn't recover it. His explanation? I did it to entertain the crowd. People love seeing a player suffer. And he certainly delivered. His reputation was so notorious that he even developed a peculiar theory. According to Bolt, the putter flies the farthest when thrown, followed by the sand wedge, while the driver is the most disappointing in terms of airborne distance. An empirical study which, though far from scientific, showed an unusual commitment to his craft. But perhaps the most iconic anecdote came when, after throwing nearly every club in his bag during an especially disastrous round, his caddy handed him the last remaining one. "Why are you giving me this?" Bolt growled through clenched teeth. Tommy Bolt was a whirlwind of talent and overflowing emotion. So much so that the PGA Tour was forced to introduce a rule penalizing unsportsmanlike behavior, a rule many attribute directly to him. In the world of golf, where composure is practically a religion, Bolt proved that even legends can have bad days. Even the greatest can make mistakes. But when the one who slips is Phil Mickelson, one of the most experienced and cunning players of his generation, the impact is much greater. President's Cup, 2015. Day 2 of the competition in South Korea. The tension was heavy. The U.S. team and the international team were battling point for point in a matchup that promised to be memorable. But no one expected that one of the tournament's most talked about moments would arrive in such an absurd way. Mickelson, playing alongside Zach Johnson in a 4-ball match, decided to switch to a firmer ball for his second shot on the par 5 7th hole. A decision that, at first glance, seemed harmless. After all, in the Ryder Cup played in the United States, the one-ball rule, which requires players to use the same model of ball throughout the round, doesn't apply. But this wasn't the Ryder Cup, and they certainly weren't on American soil. The rule was in effect, and the infraction was immediate: loss of the hole. Mickelson and Johnson went from being tied to losing a crucial point. As if that weren't enough, a confused referee informed Mickelson that he was disqualified from the hole. With no other option, Lefty picked up his ball and left Johnson alone to face Jason Day and Adam Scott. The result was predictable: a loss on the hole and an increasingly uphill battle for the Americans. For a player of Mickelson's caliber, someone accustomed to pulling the right strings in key moments, it was a basic, almost unforgivable mistake. A reminder that under the pressure of the biggest stages, even the sharpest minds can get tangled in the fine print of the rules. In a tournament where every shot matters, that slip changed the course of a match and left a blemish on the pristine career of a legend. Golf is often associated with calm, precision, and silence. But in 2014, for Pablo Larrazábal, a routine round turned into a nightmare worthy of a thriller. It was the 5th hole of a tournament in Malaysia. The Spaniard moved forward, focused, his game flowing with its usual calm. But suddenly, the air grew dense, almost heavy. A strange sensation alerted him, and when he turned his head, he saw something that froze his blood. A swarm of giant Asian hornets, 3 times the size of a regular bee, descended on him with ferocious intent. Within seconds, 30 to 40 of these insects surrounded him, launching coordinated attacks. His caddy, panicking, shouted, "Run!" But there was no escape. The hornets chased him relentlessly, driving their stingers into his neck and back. Nearby players, horrified, shouted the only possible advice: jump in the water. Without thinking twice, Larrazábal dropped his scorecard, kicked off his shoes, and dove headfirst into the adjacent lake. The cold, murky water became his improvised shelter. From there, he waited until the danger passed. Later, Pablo explained that the hornets had released pheromones on him, attracting even more of the swarm. He was stung over 20 times on the back and neck. Only his cap kept him from suffering even more severe injuries. "If I hadn't been wearing that hat," he admitted, "I probably wouldn't be here to tell it." Thanks to his quick reaction and the desperate warning from Thomas Bjorn's caddy, Larrazabal escaped what could have been a tragedy on the course. A brutal reminder that in golf, the greatest dangers don't always come from a bad swing. Sometimes, chaos in golf doesn't arise from a bad shot or a confrontation, but from something as seemingly simple as deciding where to drop a ball. Colorado, 2013. It's Friday afternoon, and the first four-ball session is progressing smoothly. But on the 15th hole, time stops. Carlota Ciganda, playing for Europe, hits her ball into a hazard. Nothing unusual. Logically, it should have been a quick drop and move on. But that day, logic decided to take a break. What followed was a spectacle of indecision unlike anything seen before. Rules officials and referees gathered on the fairway, pointing at the ground, drawing imaginary lines in the sand, and consulting the rulebook as if trying to decipher an ancient code. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. 25 in total. Yes, 25 minutes to determine a simple drop point. In that time, another group could have played 3 entire holes, or even grabbed a snack and come back before the ruling was reached. Finally, the decision arrived and shocked everyone. For the uninitiated, that's like moving it to a different hole. The US team erupted in protest. Stacy Lewis, unable to contain her frustration, threw her arms in the air in pure disbelief. If not for the threat of a penalty, she probably would have thrown her club as well. The most unbelievable part came afterward. The LPGA admitted they had made a mistake. All that lost time, all the tension and controversy, only to end with a rules error. That drop became a symbol of how, in golf, even the simplest situations can turn into an endless saga. A moment that made it clear that sometimes the clock is the real enemy on the course. There are moments that not only define a career, but rewrite the history of a sport. And in 1997, a 21-year-old named Tiger Woods did exactly that at Augusta National. It was his first Masters as a professional, and from the very first shot it was clear he wasn't there just to compete, but to dominate. With a blend of surgical precision and almost superhuman confidence, Tiger moved through the course as if he had spent decades at the top. Round after round, he dismantled the field. On Saturday, he signed an imposing 65, 7 under par, leaving the rest of the players with an uncomfortable certainty. The battle was over. When the final round arrived, Woods was unstoppable. The result was historic. A victory by 12 shots, the largest margin ever recorded in the history of the Masters. In a sport where every stroke can mean the difference between glory and oblivion, that gap felt like an abyss. When he slipped on his first green jacket, Woods not only became the youngest champion in tournament history, he marked the beginning of an era of absolute dominance, one that would transform the way the world saw golf. In the years that followed, Tiger would add 15 majors and come within reach of Jack Nicklaus's legendary record. But that day, in 1997, with the sun lighting up Augusta and the crowd on its feet, the world witnessed the birth of a legend. Golf is a sport of millimetric precision, where every shot is calculated down to the smallest detail. But sometimes, not even the most perfect swing can anticipate the unexpected, especially when nature decides to intervene. First round of the 2024 U.S. Women's Open at Lancaster Country Club. Esther Henseleit Gapsa was preparing for a simple tee shot on the par 3 12th. Her posture was perfect, her focus absolute. With a smooth swing, she sent the ball skyward, tracing a flawless path toward the green. The crowd followed its arc in expectant silence, until the unthinkable happened. In an instant that seemed like slow motion, a bird crossed the fairway mid-flight, meeting Gapsa's ball head-on. The impact was brutal. The bird plummeted to the ground, while the ball veered off course and rolled aimlessly. The entire course fell silent. The commentators were speechless. The spectators frozen. Captured live on camera, the moment evoked the infamous Randy Johnson pitch from 2001, which ended similarly for an unlucky bird. For Gapsa, it was a shot impossible to recreate, though for reasons no one would want to repeat. For the unfortunate bird, it was simply a case of terrible timing and worse placement. In the book of golf's strangest moments, This one sits near the top, a strange, somber reminder that in this sport, even the perfect swing can end in disaster when nature claims its space. Sometimes, the biggest battles in golf aren't fought with clubs and balls, but with words. And in 2002, the Solheim Cup became the epicenter of a controversy that ignited before the first shot was even struck. It all began with Catherine Nilsmark, a Swedish player known for her sharp personality. Although she wasn't part of the European team that year, Nilsmark decided to stir the pot from afar. On a Swedish forum, she unleashed a series of incendiary comments aimed at the American players. She called Christy Kerr a spoiled brat. About Michelle Redman, she declared mercilessly, "She has absolutely no talent." The statements crossed the Atlantic like a wildfire. The LPGA, in a failed attempt at diplomacy, translated the comments and distributed them in the U.S. team's locker room. Imagine the heavy silence as the players read Nilsmark's words and the determination that sparked in their eyes. Patty Sheehan, the U.S. captain, tried to calm her team. "I know this makes you feel bad," she said. But inside that locker room, indignation became powerful fuel, and on the course, the response was overwhelming. In a dramatic turnaround, the American team rallied to win 7 consecutive singles matches, snatching victory from Europe at the last moment. Was it Nilsmark's extra motivation that pushed the U.S. team? No one can say for sure. But it became clear that, in the early 2000 Solheim Cup, the rivalry was just as fierce off the course as on it. In golf, obstacles are usually predictable: bunkers, water, impenetrable rough. But at the 2023 Mexico Open, players faced an unexpected and terrifying enemy: a swarm of bees. Everything seemed normal at Vidanta Vallarta. Erik van Rooyen was preparing for his approach shot. The crowd watched in silence, and cameras followed every movement precisely. But suddenly, the air filled with an unsettling hum. What began as a faint buzz turned into a roar. A dense, dark cloud of bees emerged out of nowhere, advancing toward the course like a living storm. In seconds, the usual order of the tournament collapsed. Players, caddies, and camera crews abandoned their positions and ran for cover. Some dropped to the ground as if practicing a military drill, while others crouched behind golf carts. Amid the chaos, someone could be heard shouting repeatedly, "Bees, bees, bees!" Commentators, stunned, dubbed the moment the bee fog. Surprisingly, when the swarm finally passed, no one had been stung. Relieved, the players returned to their positions, though the tension on their faces showed it wouldn't be easy to regain focus. That day, the Mexico Open reminded us that in golf, the greatest challenge isn't always on the course. Sometimes it literally comes flying. At the 2011 Masters, Rory McIlroy was on the brink of glory until Augusta Nacional decided to teach him one of its cruelest lessons. At just 21, the young Northern Irishman was the image of golf's future: youthful charisma, explosive play, and confidence bordering on arrogance. For 3 days, he dominated the course with video game numbers: a bogey-free 65 inches the first round, followed by 69 and 70. He entered Sunday with a 4-shot lead. The world was already preparing his coronation. But Augusta doesn't hand out green jackets without testing the soul of a player. On the first 9 holes, the warning signs were subtle. A poor shot sent him into an unknown corner of the course, so far offline that the TV broadcast showed, for the first time ever, a set of hidden cabins among the trees. It was literal and metaphorical off-the-map territory. What followed was a downward spiral. Balls in the water on 13, putts slipping by millimeters, and an expression on Rory's face shifting from confidence to disbelief, and finally resignation. When he finished with a devastating 80, he had gone from leading comfortably to posting the worst score of the day. But sometimes, it's in defeat where champions are forged. That collapse was the moment that broke Rory, and the one that pushed him to rebuild himself, stronger and more determined. In the years that followed, the world would watch that curly-haired kid return to fulfill the promise of his talent. In professional golf, innovation rarely comes from a player's stance. But in 2012, Michel Vie proved that sometimes the strangest solutions can make all the difference. Tired of her struggles on the greens and looking for a way to regain confidence with the putter, we decided to break with tradition. Her new technique was so unusual it looked like an experiment. She bent forward until she was practically parallel to the ground, folded at such an extreme angle that spectators joked she could smell the grass. The style, quickly nicknamed tabletop putting, sparked all sorts of reactions. Some thought it was a lapse in judgment, others said she had lost her way. But the most surprising thing was, it worked. With her unconventional method, Michelle jumped from 119th in the world rankings to 4th in record time. Women's Open, silencing critics and proving that in golf there are no fixed rules for success. That peculiar technique went down in history as an example of how creativity and the courage to challenge norms can change the course of a career. Sometimes, to win in golf, you have to dare to look different. Golf is a game of precision and emotional control, but even professionals can have days when all of that vanishes. And no one illustrated this better than Henny Otto at the Masters of NASA. It all started with a short putt, just a few inches, a simple tap-in for any player of his level. But when the ball circled the hole and refused to drop, something in Otto snapped. What followed was an exhibition of frustration in its purest form. In a burst worthy of a baseball game, Otto swung his putter like a bat, unleashing a blow so powerful it looked like he was aiming for a home run in Game 7 of the World Series. The only reason the club didn't fly out of the course was because, miraculously, he managed to hold on to it. But the meltdown didn't stop there. Instead of regrouping, Otto continued hitting putts in increasingly erratic fashion. 5 additional attempts, each more absurd than the last. It was like watching someone play mini-golf for the first time, except this was in a professional tournament, live on television. For viewers at home, it was impossible not to laugh, and impossible to look away. That day, Henny Otto reminded us that even in a sport built on calm and composure, there are moments when emotions simply erupt. The Masters at Augusta is famous for its impeccable tradition and respect for the rules. But in 2023, a controversy took over the tournament when cameras captured an apparently innocent gesture that nearly triggered a rules scandal. Brooks Koepka had just struck a brilliant 5-iron on the par 5 15th. But as the ball approached the green, attention shifted to his caddy, Ricky Elliott. TV cameras clearly caught Elliott appearing to whisper 5, while Brooks, a few meters away, raised 5 fingers. To attentive viewers, the scene looked like a blatant violation of Rule 10, 2A, which prohibits sharing club information between players or caddies during competition. If confirmed, the penalty would be 2 strokes enough to change the outcome of the tournament. However, Augusta National imposed no penalty. According to officials, there wasn't conclusive evidence that illegal advice had been given. Koepka defended his caddy, insisting that Gary Woodland and his caddy had no idea which club was used, and that no information was exchanged. Woodland even supported that version, saying he never asked anything while walking the fairway. Despite the official decision, the controversy persisted across social media and golf talk shows. The gestures captured on video continued circulating, fueling theories and debates about the limits of ethics in the sport. In a tournament where every detail is examined under a microscope, that whisper, real or imagined, showed just how thin the line can be between strategy and infraction. Rory McIlroy is known for his calm, constant smile, and elegant swing. But in 2015, at the WGC Cadillac Championship, even the always composed Rory showed that no one is completely immune to a burst of frustration. At Trump National Doral's blue course, McIlroy began the round with a perfect 302-yard drive. Everything seemed under control until his approach with a 3-iron flew wildly offline. What happened next shocked everyone. Instead of settling for a gesture of annoyance or a short toss of the club, Rory chose a more definitive solution. With a powerful, decisive motion, he hurled his 3-iron into the lake with the force of a World Series pitcher. The club traced a perfect arc before disappearing beneath the surface. But the story didn't end there. Donald Trump, then the course owner, wasn't about to let a club become a sunken treasure in his lake. True to form, he hired a professional diver to retrieve it. Wearing a wetsuit and oxygen tank, the diver descended into the murky water in search of McIlroy's wayward weapon. After a few minutes, he resurfaced triumphantly with a 3-iron in hand, as if he'd recovered a long-lost relic. When asked about the incident, Rory joked, "It felt good at the time." Then more thoughtfully added, "Now, not so much." A confession any frustrated golfer could relate to. That day, McIlroy reminded us that even the best can have moments of weakness. The Masters at Augusta is famous for testing the nerves of the world's best golfers. But in 2016, Ernie Els experienced something so surreal, it felt as though the course itself was conspiring against him. It was the first hole of his round, the perfect moment to find rhythm and build confidence. Els, a veteran with multiple major titles, approached the green with the calm of someone who had been in countless pressure situations. Before him lay a short putt, almost routine. But when the putter struck the ball, something felt off. The ball rolled toward the hole and veered away at the last instant. A small mistake. But at Augusta, any error can open the door to disaster. Els tried to regroup, stepping up for a simple tap-in. Miss. Another attempt. Miss again. The crowd, stunned, fell into a sepulchral silence as each new error seemed to drag Els deeper into a pit of despair. 6 strokes were needed to finally hole out from a distance that, for any amateur, would be a casual flick of the wrist. 6 strokes on the green, 10 in total to complete the hole. A par 4 turned into an endless torment. Commentators whispered the dreaded words, the yips. A ghost no golfer ever wants to meet a nervous tremor that turns even the easiest putts into impossible missions. That moment was devastating not only for Els, but also for his fans, who watched him battle an invisible enemy with painful dignity. At Augusta, where every shot can be immortalized as glory or tragedy, Els's nightmare became one of the most painful collapses ever witnessed. Some moments in golf aren't defined by victory or defeat, but by the emotional weight they carry. In 2023, Max Homa found himself in one of those moments, on the course where his childhood dreams had begun. It was the 18th at Riviera Country Club, host of the Genesis Invitational. Homa had already won this tournament 2 years earlier, but that victory came during the lockdown, without the warmth of family or fans. This time was different. The ropes along the fairway were lined with loved ones, cheering him on as he battled in an epic duel against Jon Rahm. With only a few holes remaining, Rahm surged ahead with 2 brilliant birdies, leaving Homa needing a miracle to force a playoff. And on 18, the opportunity appeared. A delicate chip from the edge of the green, the kind of shot that forges legends. With a smooth, precise swing, the ball came out low, spinning with just the right amount of backspin. The crowd rose from their seats, holding their breath as the ball rolled toward the hole, as if drawn by an invisible magnet. It was perfect. But at the last instant, fate intervened. The ball hit the edge of the cup and refused to fall. For a brief moment, he had believed. Everyone had. In the press room, the emotions finally caught up to him. With a trembling voice, he confessed, "When I won in 2021, no one was here. It hurts not being able to share this with everyone this time. But I tried. I tried." That day, Homa didn't need a trophy to earn the respect and affection of the golf world. Because sometimes, the true victory lies in the fight itself. Being a caddy at the Open Championship at St. Andrews is a dream for many. But in 2005, someone made it a reality in the most unexpected way, with a click on eBay. That year, Australian David Diaz found himself in a peculiar situation. He needed a caddy for one of the most prestigious tournaments in the world, and instead of turning to colleagues on tour or experienced professionals, he chose a rather unconventional method, auctioning the position online. The listing caught the attention of a London banker named Stephen Bridle, known online as Looper Boy. After a fierce bidding war, Bridle paid more than $20,000 for the privilege of carrying Diaz's bag during the tournament. Determined not to disappoint, Diaz even hired a professional caddy to train Bridle during a practice round. 'For a few days, the banker-turned-caddy walked the historic fairways of St. Andrews, with a trembling voice, he confessed, "When I won in 2021, no one was here. It hurts not being able to share this with everyone this time. But I tried. I tried." That day, Homa finally got up to his senses. rubbing shoulders with golf legends, and living a fantasy many would pay dearly to experience. But the story didn't have the fairy tale ending everyone expected. Diaz failed to make the cut, and Bridle went from being part of the action to being, essentially, a very privileged and very expensive spectator. In total, his two-day adventure became one of the costliest pastimes in golf history. A reminder that, in this sport, sometimes dreams and credit cards cross paths in the strangest places. There are defeats in golf remembered just as much as victories. None more so than Jean van de Velde's collapse at the 1999 Open Championship. What should have been a triumphant stroll turned into a sporting tragedy that left the world in shock. Van de Velde reached the 18th hole at Carnoustie with a 3-shot lead. All he needed was a double bogey to become the first French champion since 1907. Victory was so close that commentators were already speaking his name alongside the claret jug. But golf, in its cruelest essence, allows no premature celebrations. Instead of playing it safe with an iron off the tee, Van de Velde pulled the driver. His tee shot barely carried the berry burn. Finishing in the rough, he still had room to spare. A safe second shot was all he needed, but pressure began to take over. In an inexplicable decision, he attacked the flag with a 2-iron. The ball bounced off a grandstand railing, hit a stone in the wall, and settled in even thicker rough. Tension turned to disbelief when his third shot came off horribly and finished back in the berry burn. Then came an image etched forever into golf history. Van de Velde removed his shoes and socks, rolled up his trousers, and stepped into the stream. Standing in the water, he contemplated the possibility of attempting the impossible with his ankles submerged. The world watched, millions holding their breath. After an eternal moment, he regained his senses and chose to take a drop, but the damage was done. He finished the hole with a triple bogey 7. Falling into a playoff, he would ultimately lose to Paul Lawrie. What should have been a historic moment for French golf became one of the greatest televised nightmares in sports. A ruthless reminder that in golf, no lead is safe until the final ball drops. In golf, a 2-foot putt is almost automatic, but in 2017, Lexi Thompson learned that in this sport, nothing is guaranteed, and even the simplest shots can carry the weight of an entire season. It was the final round of the CME Group Tour Championship, the tournament that closed the year. Thompson, then 22, had endured a turbulent season, from the 4-stroke penalty at the ANA Inspiration triggered by a TV viewer calling into a series of victories that proved her resilience. Now, on the 18th hole, she stood one short stroke from redemption, a short put. Holing it meant Player of the Year, World Number 1, and $500,000 in bonus prize money. The crowd went silent. Commentators held their breath. The scene had all the makings of a perfect finale, until it wasn't. Thompson's putter moved firmly. The ball started on line, but as it reached the hole, something inexplicable happened. The edge of the cup redirected it, making it spin around before spitting it out mercilessly. A muffled gasp of disappointment rippled through the gallery as Thompson remained frozen, eyes fixed on the hole, as if her mind refused to accept what had just happened. That miss didn't just cost her the tournament. It became the final chapter of a season, marked by struggle, controversy, and the search for redemption. Yet even in defeat, Lexi showed admirable strength. Despite the heartbreak, she walked away with the trophy for the season's lowest scoring average and a $1 million bonus for winning the race to CME Globe. It wasn't the glory she sought, but it was a reminder that in golf, as in life, you don't always win with a single putt. And now we reached the most heartbreaking moment in golf history. A story that, decades later, remains a brutal reminder of how unforgiving this sport's rules can be. Masters Tournament, Augusta. Roberto De Vicenzo, the great Argentine golfer, had just signed for a spectacular 65, putting himself in position to fight for the title in a playoff. Excitement filled the air. Everything seemed set for De Vicenzo to become champion. But, in a cruel twist of fate, his playing partner, Tommy Aaron, made an error while marking the card. He recorded a par on the 17th hole instead of the birdie De Vicenzo had made. Unaware of the mistake, Roberto signed the incorrect card, and in golf, The rule is clear. Once a player signs the card, the score stands, even if it's higher than the true one. De Vicenzo went from a 65 to an official 66, missing the playoff by a single stroke. His reaction was as simple as it was devastating. "What a stupid I am." A phrase that became legendary not because of the loss, but because of the humility and dignity with which he accepted an error that wasn't entirely his. That day, De Vicenzo didn't just lose a tournament. Golf lost one of the most deserved coronations in its history. And he left us with a lesson. In this game, as in life, sometimes a small oversight can change everything. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the wildest, most emotional, and most epic moments in golf history. If you enjoyed this ride and want to keep exploring the most thrilling side of the sport, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your favorite moments in the comments. And remember, in golf, just like in life, every shot counts.